Olivier from the creative agency called MeshMinds. And we met a couple of months ago, both working for UNEP on the Clean Seas campaign. And they do really interesting work using the software Spark AR to make these really novel and light and immersive and fun experiences that people can access just through the star icon on Instagram. You don't need to have a fancy Magic Leap or some kind of headset. So it's really accessible. We're going to invite people to try it out now. If you've got your phone on you and you want to go to the UNEP at UNEP, you can press on the star icon. They'll also have some QR codes that they'll show you if you want to access that more quickly. This is an important issue because having engagement, social sharing, social proof, social diffusion, all of these things about humans sharing concepts with other humans is how social movements and tipping points happen. And I thought it was a really interesting angle to take using this software. I'd seen Spark AR software before, but I never really thought that it was viable. I thought it was something that you'd use bunny ears and makeup for. It actually never crossed my mind that it was a tool that we could use for environmental gains. And I think they're really talented, and we're all excited and delighted to learn from you today. So welcome to the show, Kay and Olivier.
Hello, good morning from Singapore, actually. Thank you so much, Katie, for having us. It's so awesome to see all your faces and literally to be from all corners of the world. So thank you. Do you also want me to just answer what everyone else just had to answer in terms of what we also had to study and all that kind of stuff and where we came from?
Sure, why not?
So I studied law. So I'm a tech lawyer by trade, actually. And so the kind of art and tech for good is the culmination of all of the things that I've basically done. And I was really inspired by watching a VR experience that was done by Greenpeace back in the day that took people away to the Amazon rainforest. And then they actually realized that they doubled their donations at Glastonbury that year. So just kind of thinking through how emerging technologies can actually be used for really good purposes. That's what kind of got it all going. And I was previously head of arts at the British Council. So then I kind of brought it all together. I've also been in volunteering all my life. So art and tech for good is basically what drives the entire company. And then we have the amazing Ollie, who's our Chief Inspiration Officer.
So I got similarly inspired as like Kay. So back in the days when I was still living in Amsterdam, my hometown, and during my university days, I learned all about human-centered design. And we created a concept for VR for elderly. And once we did all the user testing from like transporting elderly people who are immobile from their immobile homes to places they have been before or never been before. And when I saw the reactions of these elderly people from putting on a VR headset and taking it off, mind blowing, how emotional they were and how glad they were to see other places using VR. So from that point, it inspired me to just go on the route of using tech for good. And then a couple of years later, I came across Kay in Singapore, and from there on, really well connected and always on a journey to use technology for good. So I'm very happy to be here.
Wonderful. It's a beautiful story, and I'm excited to dive into it, a bit more of the nuances in it. So there's one question that I ask everybody when we start. And so we'll start asking this with Kay. So it's zooming out a bit. It's a bit more of an umbrella question. What is the problem with environmental campaigns and environmental communications when they are not bringing these concepts of novelty, fun, and interaction design and creativity into their communications? What is environmentalism as a whole missing out on when we're not taking this stuff really seriously?
I think, unfortunately, what you have an awful lot of right now is apathy raising rather than empathy raising. And what we've got is an awful lot of kind of very, very serious doom and gloom. Now, I think that we can very much leave the doom and gloom in the hands of the news and the media, governments, because they will always continue to report like, oh my goodness, massive flooding in Bangladesh, oh my goodness, all these people displaced, etc. It's not going to go away. Even also, if you look at the way that UNEP are doing their Instagram, they do kind of look a lot at nature photography and things like, sea turtles. So they're trying to kind of focus on the beauty of nature. Now, between the two of them, there's definitely a massive gap for education, but specifically focused on specific behaviors that people can get on board with, rather than like, oh my goodness, I just feel so overwhelmed by all of this information. Not only the doom and gloom, but also maybe I live in a city. I live in a very high-rise building. I don't live near the sea. I don't see nature on a normal day-to-day basis. Yet I really do realize I value going to the local park and that kind of stuff. But all of the images maybe that I see on UNEP's Instagram, I don't feel particularly connected to. especially when we have things like a turtle with a straw up its nose or something. Just don't feel particularly connected to that. What is something that I personally can do wherever I live, whether it's in that massive, tall, central London office block, or tower block, or if it's, I do live by the sea, what is it that something simple that I can do that could potentially, if we all individually do it, then collectively it can make a real impact. So I think less apathy raising situations where people are kind of like, oh, the problem is just so massive. I have no idea what I can do individually. I will just use my thumb and keep scrolling past, or use my thumb to turn off that remote control and turn off the TV. I just don't know what to do. I'm stepping back from it all, and I'm just going to continue as normal. And that is really what we need to tackle. And so therefore, by making it fun, drawing people in and allowing their mind to relax, then that's when we can say, oh, come and join us on this journey. It's actually a fun journey. You might enjoy it. You're going to meet other people along the way, and all together, through enjoying this journey, we can save the planet.
I've never heard anyone describe it that way in terms of empathy versus apathy. I think that's real genius. And I have not actually been using the word apathy, but I do talk a lot about the doom and the negativity style of climate communications, and that we really need vision and imagination instead of doom. But it's a really wonderful way to phrase it. And it's also very, very catchy. And I thought what would be cool is to just go through a snapshot. Maybe this question is good for Olivier, of each of the campaigns that you've done. I know the Clean Seas one that you've done, and I saw some others. Do you just want to run through just very quickly what these campaigns and the experiences that you created were for them?
Of course, I can now flash up the Beat Plastic Pollution campaign, the 100 Days to Beat Plastic Pollution, that encompasses 4 AR effects on Instagram. So
as Katie said, you can literally just go to the UNEP page, but also if you want to use the QR code, you can scan it right there. And if you don't want to and you can do it later, then you can see the little videos, the little demo videos of how each of those games work.
Just go through and just explain like the theory behind them, how they work, what the game flow design is.
Definitely. So basically what we're focusing on as MeshMinds is really edutainment instead of entertainment. And as you can see, we created several type of AR experiences for Instagram and Facebook to think about, okay, how can we make learning fun, but also challenging and shareable? And Instagram is a great platform for that. So let me just give you a rundown of these 4 AR effects. So on the left, you see Say No to Single Use, which is a very challenging game that you have to say yes when you see, or you have to nod your head stating yes to the reusable items and no to the single-use items. And all these characters that you see are also beautifully designed by a character artist who's based in Tokyo, Sas Grane, and he helped us design these characters that we can implement in these experiences. You have to nod your head or shake your head with the time given, and then as long as you go, you get a score as well. But the higher your score is, the shorter the time you have to answer. Also giving that sense of urgency, we need to act now. Done. Over here you have Drowning in Plastic, which is also a very fun game made by us, or basically an experience where you basically get a deluge of single-use plastic over your face or over your whole screen, giving that sense of drowning in plastic, basically. And from there on, you have to shake your head to say no to it, and then the beautiful reusables come into place as well. We also included like a reusable mask, since we're also living basically in a plastic pandemic. We want to give a nudge to that as well. So then you can instantly share on your story or as a post on Instagram, and also make your pledge to beat plastic pollution. So these 2 are face effects. Then over here, we have Clean Our Oceans, which is a so-called world effect with a little Easter egg of a face effect in there. So how it works, you get like around 30 seconds to basically clean up the oceans, where you can move your phone around. And from there on, when you move your phone around, you need to find the single-use plastic in this ocean. And from there on, you just need to aim your net to capture these single-use items in the time given. And then at the end, you get also a score with a call to action, what you can do to beat plastic pollution, as you can see here on the video. And once you're done with the game, you can even turn it around and have your high score above your head with your call to action and make your pledge onto your story as well. And then last but not least, we have Meet the Reusables, where we created a world effect to simply show how you can change your habits, basically, from using a single-use plastic bag to a reusable bag, for example. You can place this 3D reusables that we created where you want. Maybe you want to show that you are switching over finally to a reusable bottle. So you can choose the reusable bottle, place it on your desk or wherever you are and say, hey, I chose my reusable bottle now. This is the habit I want to carry for life now. So then you can give a nudge like, okay, maybe be super creative and place certain items next to you, place the reusable item and show that you care and show that you want to make a change to inspire others to join 100 Days to Beat Plastic Pollution. You can try it out by scanning the QR code, or as Katie said, you can go to @UNEP on Instagram. Then you have the little effects icon if you have never discovered it, and it has little stars. And you see most effects that we also created for UNEP as well.
Just say that the big difference between these games is that obviously with mobile games is you don't use your thumbs, okay? So you're actually invited to use your physical interaction of your face. So shake your head, no, I don't want that polluting plastic, or yes, I do want that. So those are the two on the left. And then the other two, as Ollie was saying, is a world effect. Now, we deliberately made Clean Our Oceans. You'll see when you play it later, it's quite hard to play, right? It's not just the net is so easy just to kind of grab. It's laggy because if you're in real life, when you're trying to grab that piece of plastic with a net, it's hard to drag your net through the pull of the water. And then finally, with the Meet the Reusables, you can get super creative. So it's kind of a nice set where it has interaction, inspiration, creativity. But across all of them, you have that ability to then tag your friends and create your own ripple effect through social media.
I saw some others on your website as well with a gorilla game as well. Do you want to talk through some of the other ones as well?
It was Run for Nature. So this was also for World Environment Day 2020. Where we focused on for nature, or basically biodiversity of our planet, where we created this very interesting game where you basically have to choose your hero animal. It's either gorilla or the sea turtle or the polar bear, where you can dive into their environments and actually move your head to avoid their obstacles, their life-threatening obstacles. As you can see, the sea turtle needs to avoid the plastic bottles in the ocean. And from there, when you move around the obstacle, you get points. But also it gets a bit harder over time to challenge yourself in terms of getting a higher score and challenge other people. And every time you avoid an obstacle, you actually see a little icon popping up, which is another endangered animal in that same environment. So then you get also a bit of an education of, hey, okay, these animals are endangered, but then you're still challenged to do so. And it was a great success last year to focus on gamification of these challenges. And therefore, you could instantly share it. It was fun to play. It had a cool soundtrack in behind. And it got great traction. So please try it out over here. Or again, you can go to the UNEP Instagram page. And from there, find the stars icon, scroll down, and there you see it.
Wonderful. Are there any more before I jump into any more questions?
Another game was for a big corporate, which was for DBS. So it's called Fashion Slowdown. So Fashion Slowdown is a game that we focus on fashion consumption and how it also harms the environment. Therefore, we collaborated with DBS, a Singaporean bank, and created this social campaign on social media to also have a kind of edutainment experience where you have to blink with your eyes to move that piece of clothing out of the landfill or not dropping into the landfill. And then you also get a certain score, as in months, for how long it takes to make sure that your piece of clothing is sustainable, so to say, and not harming for the environment. I believe it was around 24 months in that sense to keep your clothing in that, to not make it harmful, if I'm correct. But therefore, it was a really challenging game, a really fun soundtrack. You need to avoid the trash as well. It's like a Flappy Bird kind of style game where you have to avoid the landfills. At the end, you also get a call to action or an effect around fashion sustainability as well. But that's also a quite fun game. And this is under the DBS account, DBS Singapore. So that's also showing how we can also work with bigger corporates and focus on their climate communications that they also want to focus on.
Awesome. These are really wonderful. I just want to make sure I've groomed through because you had so much in there. Any more that you want to share?
So for this one, we actually educated these wonderful 4 Singaporean artists to learn Spark AR and then create their own experiences. So Net Sustain is Net Aporte's sustainable fashion edit. You can find sustainable clothing in there, sustainable creams for your face, all sorts of different things. And to relaunch it, they were relaunching their 9th principle, which is designed for circularity. And so we wanted to work with them to bring all of their 9 principles to life. So all of these ladies have focused on a different principle, for example, locally made or craftsmanship, considered processes, considered ingredients. So you can try all of those out as well. We can make this available as well to you, no problem. And lots of these experiences you can also just find on our MeshMinds Instagram as well.
You can actually train your audience to make their own experiences as well, rather than just make something that they can use.
Exactly. We don't like to just do it ourselves. And a large part of our organization is the MeshMinds Foundation. Through the foundation, we teach artists how to make these experiences for themselves.
That's wonderful. I'm hoping that you might teach our group who are interested in biophilic imagination of cities, maybe how to do that. That's our
Absolutely.
dream.
Lovely.
So I'm interested in, what is the one big insight you've gotten out of this work?
I suppose for me, it's the reach, right, that the internet can actually offer. It's really quite astounding in that sense. And it's just grown year on year from when we started. When we first did our very first little clean air for World Environment Day in, what was that, 2018, was it, Ollie? No, 2019. We got we've got 100,000 people who actually did it across 70 countries. That's the kind of figure that we get in a day now. So it really has grown. And the reach is also then translated into people who then play and then people who share. And you do genuinely see the ripple effect actually happening. What we are learning more now, though, is actually the effect of celebrities and the people like UNEP Goodwill Ambassadors is somewhat not bad, but we need to focus more on community leaders, or what we call sustainability advocates. And it's these amazing people that will then carry all of these things through. Less focus on celebrities, more focus on real people actually taking action. And that's the whole crux of the 100 Days to Beat Plastic Pollution campaign, is that we've identified these amazing community leaders across Southeast Asia, spotlighted those people and designed for those people. So the whole toolkit is designed for them to then share what they're doing, whether that's your beach cleanup in the Philippines or your educational series in Vietnam, whatever it is that you're doing, take these augmented reality tools, which are all free, and then share what you're doing with your network. And then hopefully you'll create that ripple effect yourself. That's what I've taken away from it. Ollie?
Yeah, to add on to that, and then the power of micro-influencers, right? Or basically getting a genuine attachment with these people is, for me, astonishing, right? It really feels genuine to then all come together on a unified campaign, basically. You feel connected with these people because you can do the same actions, basically. It becomes very close to you as well. And with the power of augmented reality, that's what I see, is people are involved more. The interaction is getting closer and closer. So you can bring it closer to home. You see the progress of how the internet has grown, right? From basically staring at your browser on a flat screen, it's going to your pocket, and from your pocket, it goes basically out of the world. So you can use the world around you now to actually make an action as well. So what I take out of it as well is indeed the reach, but also the accessibility. Accessibility becomes so much more easy, basically, for everyone to use these kind of tools to become part of a campaign, something bigger than yourself. That is something I really got inspired by myself. Reach and accessibility to create this ripple effect, to become part of something bigger than yourself is, I think, very, very interesting.
So what I got from that it's a technique to really leverage social norms and social diffusion. I've interviewed so many academic environmental psychologists now. I'm just doing what they do and just using the proper academic phrases. So I was just interviewing one academic about a paper on social diffusion, which, I mean, it's pretty obvious what it means, that we share behaviors, we share belief systems, knowledge, music, viruses, everything through human contacts, humans contacting each other. And that's what social media is. And so it sounds like that the better we are at making these experiences, we can really leverage this idea of social norms, which is people copying what other people do, and also social diffusion in this big like social connector network. And social media can be very hard to wield. Just because you set up an Instagram or a Twitter, it doesn't instantly grow to like 1 million users. It really does take a lot of work, and it's quite challenging to grow a really like engaged audience. And all the people that come to me for advice and consulting, they're like, oh, we've got all these great ideas. And they're like, but we don't have like 1 million users. So like we basically have no way to get our idea like out to people. And I've been learning that the actual building the mechanisms of sharing and of social media marketing and getting out there is 80 or 90% of the work of anything. Doesn't matter what your idea is, you're going to have to put all the hard yards in, really in the outreach. It's really interesting to hear you so dive in so much to really grabbing that kind of social media marketing. Next question is, what advice would you give to people who are sustainability professionals, managers? These are often people that don't even do any creative marketing work at all. They're people working in cities as sustainability managers for corporations, people working for big not-for-profits through industry groups like the solar industry group, and generally thinking about policy and thinking about individual action. If there was one sentiment you could impress on them, what would you do, or how would you tell the story?
I would say keep it simple. I think especially in today's world, our attention is so much taken away by so many different things. The fact that, as Ollie was saying, we have this little smartphone in your pocket. It's like your pocket rocket. I mean, when I grew up, I had all of my information came from the TV, unidirectional, or I needed to go and find out something. Okay, I'll go to the library and look it up in a book. So now we have access to this smartphone, which is all incredibly powerful, but it also kind of sucks out a lot of our attention. So when you're trying to get people to do stuff, keep it simple, specific behaviors, specific habits, or something that you want them to focus on. Don't try and be like, well, in order to save the world, you have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And it's like, because again, you're going to scare people. You're going to have that sudden rush of apathy. It's like, I don't have time for that. No. Saving the planet is for somebody else. It's somebody else's business. It's not my business. Thank you very much. So off I go, and I'll just go about my normal day. So please try to keep your communication simple. And this is also something that we've been on a learning journey ourselves, right? So when you contrast and what we did for Run for Nature with what we've done for 100 Days to Beat Plastic Pollution, you'll see that 100 Days to Beat Plastic Pollution has very specific requests, which is simply look at these 7 everyday items, whether that's your bottle, whether it's your straws, your cutlery, etc., and try to move away or completely avoid any type of single-use plastic everyday usage, right? When you contrast that with Run for Nature, it was just kind of generally, broadly, hey, the call to action is just make a social media post about For Nature, that you're going to also join this For Nature movement. But it was quite nebulous. It's like, but what am I supposed to do to help nature? I'm not very sure, right? So we've also learned along the way, keep it simple and be very, very specific.
What about you, Ollie? Advice for the sustainability, the environmental engineers out there who are trying to make a dent.
Exactly. So, well, simplicity is key right here. To also try and make it as personal as possible, right? If the problem is far from home and I just don't see I don't have the tools to actually do something. For example, people in, let's say, the Philippines, they're so bound to use plastic because they're almost forced to it, to use the little sachets they have. So they're living in a different kind of culture, right? So how can we help these people and make their life also easier in that sense by avoiding these items as much as possible? But it's also done to the corporates. But for the messaging, needs to be short and concise, but try also to make it a bit more visual, right? People are very visual persons. So from there on, is the impact of visual imagery it's astonishing to me as well. And by highlighting the case, for example, easy to understand infographics till hard-hitting imagery is very striking for people. That's why we also try to distill certain messages that we have to convey in our campaigns in a very easy visual manner that could also be very compelling, but also inviting for you to, okay, there is this problem out there, but what can we do in a positive way? And also try to bring a light in the positivity of certain messaging. But for me, I think it really is about making it simple. I also bring it back to when I was a bit younger and I watched Gore, I believe, and he said all these numbers and this and this thing. I had no idea what he was talking about. It's like, okay, cool. What can I do about it? So for me, it's like making the call to actions very clear and concise. What can we do? And also make it specific to people, to make it close to home and make it personalized. So from there on, we know what to do. And it's actually quite easy to do. And according to research, it only takes 66 days to form a new habit. So let's get on to it, babe.
It's so funny that you say this thing about needing to just really drill down to very specific and discrete behaviors, because that is like basically the one thing that I bang on against again and again and again. And people book me for these consulting calls on action design or behavior design. And I've had enough of them now that I'm pretty much having the same conversation now every time, which is people say, I've got an idea for like a game or an app or a startup, and it's going to be solving all the things we're going to be doing, like climate change and waste and building design and trees and the ocean. And then they're going to be able to just like look through all of the world's problems, and then they're going to figure out some things that they can do, and then they'll do it. And I'm just like, no. Okay, everybody, like, and that there's this enormous psychological resistance to just being able to choose one thing and do it well. I also kind of want to solve all the problems all at the time, but I don't know what this thing is with people when they're trying to think up stuff that they want to. So I've got to solve climate change. So do this, and this. And now we've thrown you 150 different things at you, and then it's overwhelming, it's cognitive load, and then it doesn't really work. And then let's just all blame capitalism and the oil companies because we couldn't design one straightforward behavior for people to do. But also when you're working on these augmented reality experiences, you are kind of bound also by some limitations. So you kind of like have to be really specific with it. And so I'm interested in this angle with what you do. I started asking this of the academics, which is every time somebody studies a paper, they do something that's a little bit different that hasn't been done before. They'll read all of the academic evidence and then they'll go in a little bit of a different direction. So I want to ask you the same question. What is different about what you've done that nobody else?
I think it is related to that kind of what I touched on before in terms of that physical interaction, right? So that difference between having to do something with your thumbs, which we do every day, right? We scroll, trying to make a difference with your thumbs. But actually the augmented reality actually offers lots of different interactions, as Ollie was showing you. So you can have just blinking, you can have nodding, you can have nod your head yes and nod, shake your head the other way. So that is like, I think, a little bit different in that sense. And we're finding that I have a hunch, and I think Katie, you share this, that physically shaking your head when you see something that you don't want, surely that has some greater, deeper cognitive effect inside you than when you're doing something clicking with your thumb. I have a hunch. It's not scientifically proven, but I do genuinely think that physical interaction of saying, no, I don't want this future that you are painting for me, it's something that we really want to explore more. And we genuinely believe that augmented reality therefore gives you that option to kind of go down that route and get real engagement because of that interaction.
It is fascinating. It could be, for example, like even planting a tree with your own hands, like with your augmented reality hands, or if you're actually saying no, or if you're having to grab something, choose A or choose B, and you have to actually grab the other one or something like that. That is really quite, it has a kind of a different cognition to it than if you're just basically watching a video, even if it's a really nicely produced video. Doing something like this has this potential for having this greater saliency and potential behavior change. I was going to open up to questions, and Yoled had her hand up to ask a question, which I also had, which is diving into the deeper connection between how do we create these digital experiences turning into actual real behavior change and not just a whole lot of viral marketing that doesn't actually doing anything in the end. I mean, do you have any data on it? What's the kind of evidence and what's been your journey of getting people from the app into the real world behaviors?
So far we've managed to work with 2 research scientists on VR papers. So we published those already. And we want to do more on AR. So we are working on one for AR as well, looking at the Beat Plastic Pollution campaign. So what we did with VR is we put people in the ocean at a virtual diving experience. And over the course of 3 minutes, you had to kind of like, you were in the ocean, oh, this is fun. And then you had to play a ride and catch game whereby your task was cleaning the ocean. And more than 80% of people, when they take off that headset, said they feel deeply concerned. So they rated themselves a 9 or a 10 out of 10 in terms of how much they felt like they needed to do something. Because at the end of the game, unfortunately, you realize that no matter how much you try, you'll never, ever finish this game. And you become completely engulfed in the ocean, almost quite suffocating. And then quickly you're like pulled out. And as you're pulled out, the last thing that you see is a first person perspective of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, completely just in front of you, right? And you realize how tiny you are in relation to it. That's the joy and the real kind of empathy raising machine that VR offers, because you can't look anywhere else, right? You're captive audience. So we're kind of thinking through like applying those same thought processes of like, okay, if you've done the AR experience, will you actually then commit to do something? And what we think though, is it's a little bit like having a digital support network, whereby even imagine if you're kind of like trying to give up chocolate cake or give up smoking or cigarette, alcohol or whatever, sometimes people go, oh, I need a support network. I'll like tell my friends. So at lunch tomorrow, please don't offer me that extra slice of chocolate cake. So your friends can then help you to then keep that pledge to yourself, that commitment, right? So this is what augmented reality potentially offers, is because we're asking people to go online and make a public pledge. In doing so, they use the augmented reality tool to then share that message with their friends, you see? So we think we're onto something, but yet no, it hasn't been massively tested, right? But we do see the research from our VR, and we're kind of like, cool, okay, let's try and apply that same thinking and apply that same surveying of people to AR, and we will publish the results and we'll share those with you as well.
In the behavioral psychology literature, they call it a commitment device. So we could be using a combination of social norms and using the AR as a commitment device, which is it's enormously powerful. And I think people don't always realize like how core it is to the evolution of the human mind, that in order for humans to, whatever we evolved from, to actually function in groups, trust is just so critical to groups of whatever the missing link, whatever we were a long time ago, that we had to build trust. And so when we're tapping into this thing called the commitment device, a pledge, we're really going like deep into our primordial selves. That's why it's so much more of a powerful mechanism to work with than something that's more education based, which is using the prefrontal cortex. You need to have some education, higher IQ to be able to interpret this. These came much later in the evolution of the human species. So I think just that anything that can bring in commitments and pledges and promises, trust, it can be really, really behaviorally powerful in a way that just the education bit can't. When you are putting these experiences together, what do you think is the most important thing to get right to make sure that people love it?
What I think is really important is, first of all, is get the messaging right. Like having the messaging right of what you're trying to convey is so important, because if we have that wrong, we say the wrong stuff, it could lead people on to other kind of things. It seems very, very apparent and very straightforward, but it could go wrong, right? Things that we need to put in these experiences needs to be easy to be understood, easy understandable, but also factual correct. You just need to make sure we give the right tools that people could use with the right messaging around it, but then also thinking about the correct user flow. The user flow of, okay, does it make sense? This is what we do countless of times, of to think about, okay, what, like Kane, myself, we always do basically the mom check. If my mom would understand it, right? If my mom could play it, then it's okay. So we can go through the whole experience itself and see, okay, maybe we need to improve a certain button, or it needs to move up or left or right. All these kind of little things. So the messaging and user flow is very important to me.
Well, that's why we work with the UN, right? We didn't want to kind of just make these games and just kind of spuriously claim something or get the call to action wrong, as Ollie was saying. But I think for me, balancing, having a delicate balance between the fun factor and then the education factor. And you kind of need to have like quite an equal balance, right? Don't go too hard into trying to educate people through this very kind of short experience. We do refer to them as somewhat throwaway experiences, different to a mobile game where it has different levels, dimensions, unlocking characters and all this kind of stuff. That's not available in AR. So you're basically going to do something that you need to convey something in about 15 to 30 seconds max, and then you're kind of out of there. They might, fingers crossed, if they like the kind of high scoring mechanism, they then challenge their friends. But are they going to come back day after day after day to challenge their friends? Maybe not. So it's kind of like about hitting them fast and hard with a really big dose of fun factor, but also getting across your educational message in a really fast and quick way. And therefore, as Ollie said, messaging is really key. So don't try and like overload them with all the woes of the world. Just keep it really simple. I've got about 15 to 30 seconds to tell you something, and then to open your eyes in a fun way whilst your brain is like open and really elastic to take on new information. We don't have that apathy, we have that empathy, because we're like, oh, this is fun. What's this? This new innovation factor, like, okay. And then hit them with a message, a really simple call to action. I want you to do this. Now go do it. Now you've had fun, now go do it.
Can you dive into the whole creative process of iteration and testing? Have you seen that diagram? I said a lot of people have it around San Francisco and Silicon Valley. I just sent it to one of my clients, which is, it's got like a skateboard and then a bicycle and then like a car and then a Ferrari. And it says like, do it this way. And then it says, don't do it this way, which is a Ferrari, just put a bit of a Ferrari deconstructed. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a way to design things where you think of it all exactly how you want it, just in your own head. And then you go and then you build it, and then nobody ever sees it until it's completely delivered, and then it like flops, or it's considered to be the bad way of doing it. So the best way of doing it is to do like rapid iterations and testing, like showing it to people, getting their feedback, figuring out if they like it, revising it, testing, lots and lots of conversations, making sure it's good. Can you just take me through the process that you go through? You must try like come up with like 10 or 20 ideas, and then have to figure out which one sticks, and then all the little tiny changes, and it's kind of like the level of testing that you do to get to the final product.
I'll just give you a little bit of perspective, because it's quite different across the board, right? 100 Days to Beat Plastic Pollution, we were really fortunate to then work on it from January all the way through for about 9 months, and then launch it in September. So that one was like, right, we're designing for this particular audience. We've got a really deep dive into Southeast Asian youth who are 13 to 25-year-olds. What drives them? What are they interested in? What's going to be a really eye-catching design? So little mascots, for example, are very popular in Asia. So we're like, okay, right, let's use that. And let's use as well, because lots of people don't speak English, certainly not as their mother tongue in this region. So let's make sure we employ all the visual literacy techniques that we possibly can. Keep all of the words to an absolute minimum. And wherever we can, if we're able to spotlight sustainability advocates, able to kind of share the messages in their own language as well, etc. So under lots of the Instagram posts, you'll see translations into Vietnamese, Tagalog, anything, all that kind of stuff. And we actually recorded the voices of some of the sustainability advocates as well. So with that one, that has a very much longer lead time. On other things, we've got like Run for Nature. I think we bashed it out in about 6 weeks. So it was really like, then that's very much working around like, well, what do we think is like a good gameplay, is going to be really catchy, that we can do quickly. And then that's working with UNEP to kind of just think about what they want to convey, what the message is, and kind of just putting it out there. Then once that's sorted, we go into Ollie's department, which is this kind of like, right, once we've got the inspiration done and we're building it all, how do we go through the testing part?
So indeed, you need to understand the target audience first, what to design for them. But with the testing part, and we have the brief ready, basically, then I'm thinking about certain types of iterations of that story to tell in a gamified way. So looking on inspiration on the web, etc. But then the testing begins. Software that we use is Spark AR Studio. It's made by Facebook. They make it so as many phones possible can use it, right? So you have to think about the file size limit of these experiences and certain policies that they also have. Like previously, you couldn't have static text in there. Now you can. So changing all the time. So you need to be on top of the certain types of updates because, believe it or not, the software is still in beta. So, and they come out with new versions every week, basically. And therefore we need to keep on, okay, this is allowed to do so and this is not allowed to do so. But from there on, the testing begins. Like, okay, try to step out of my own comfort zone, and how would I use it? Use it with my friends, for example. Like, hey guys, I just give them the phone and don't tell anything, right? See if they understand the flow and say, okay, afterward, what do you think? They give me an immediate reaction. I think the immediate reaction of these people is most valid, because from there on, you don't want people to like, oh, okay, it's okay to try it again, of course. AR is new technology, so we have to give it a bit of a nudge from, okay, yes, it's trying to understand. Not everyone knows how it works yet. Sometimes very hard for us to step inside those shoes because we're diving in so much into it, and then to understand it from a different perspective sometimes hard. So it's good to give the device then in terms of testing to people who've never came across it before, and to make that experience as fluid as possible and easy as possible. So from there on, looking at ways how I interact with it, if the visual elements are compelling, the messaging is correct, if that call to action is clearly defined, what people can do, and most of all, like what is the point when people are sharing their experience? Okay, now they've done the experience. What is it, what they're going to share? Is it an end game screen, for example? Is the little 5-second recording of what they've done so far with the call to action, or with the fact in the game itself, or in the AR effect? So all these things do matter during testing. So all the way, how I see it from your diagram, right? Starting with a skateboard. Then I'm not that familiar with it, but I will always like to say, like, choose what type of skateboard you want to use first, right? Because you need to understand your target audience. Like maybe it's a little penny board, or it's basically a longboard that you're going to use. And in the end, maybe from a Ferrari, it's a Lamborghini. So all these things matter as well before even designing or create the whole experience itself, is by laying out the steps that you need to do. And also thinking about, from skateboard to bicycle, what type of skateboard? Is it a racing bike, or is it just how we call it in Holland, a grandma bike that is more chill for you to ride on? So from there on, it's like a constant going back and forth of, okay, this works, it doesn't work. And from there on, what is the end game screen to what is what we want people to share? So this is constant iteration of trying out and going back and saying, okay, maybe change this differently than other things.
And fundamentally, just really keeping that human at the center of everything that we do. Yes. We have an experienced designer who always just keeps us on the straight and narrow in terms of like, where's the human in this? What are they doing? What are they expected to do? As Ollie was saying, like if the call to action is like, hey, share this, but actually sharing it is so hard. You can't even figure out what you're even supposed to be doing. And then you're asked to share something like, no, you can't leapfrog that section, right? So all along the way, where's the human? What are they doing? And what are they expected to do next, right? And just keep it really simple.
Yeah, I find in a lot of the way environmental engineers and environmental scientists go about building anything digital, there tends to be a big forgetting that there are users who use it somewhere, and that you should be talking to them regularly. So I think it's really cool to be able to dive into the actual process. Like, how many people do you test at what stage? Do you have like interviews that go for 2 hours or for 30 minutes, or like really going into this, that you really have to be talking to people at the end and watching their user behavior and constantly iterating it. It's not this batch process that you just finish and then you go off a cliff and then it's done.
Absolutely.
My next question is, what is the hardest thing to get right when you're putting these things together?
Again, I suppose just for me, I think just making sure you design correctly for the target audience, but also making sure that you're going to have that empathy raising. I suppose it's hard to know how much empathy you are going to actually raise, right? And through that kind of process, you kind of also look at other people like, oh, how many shock tactics should we use? Before we actually settled on the drowning in plastic experience, we also almost did one which was inspired by a campaign that had run in real life in Thailand. And this campaign had actually physically wrapped real people in cellophane wrap and sellotape and all this like really shocking images. It was hands down one of the most successful campaigns that had actually run in Thailand. We're like, oh, wow. And some of our younger members of the team, they actually made a prototype whereby you look into your camera and in augmented reality, you are enveloped in this incredibly suffocating feeling cling wrap. And whilst they loved it, and whilst we agreed that, my goodness, that is like shock level 10,000, it wasn't the right way to go for this particular campaign. Because if we had perhaps been only focused on the 18 to 25 market, maybe we could have got there. But actually, our directive was this needs to be a campaign for 13 to 25. So it needs to, and that's quite a big difference if you think about someone who's 13 and someone who's 25, right? What drives them, how they understand the world is very, very different, right? So we needed to create something that was kind of universally fun and also kind of gets you on board with the message, but then makes you like, no, I don't want that polluting plastic. So there are all these different things at play. So kind of making sure you design correctly for the defined target audience is absolutely key. So therefore, also one step before that, how do you find out who your target audience is, right? Where does that come from? For us, specifically for this campaign, it comes from the UN. We want to target these people, right? But if you're designing something in particular for yourself, first really deep dive into what do you think your target audience is? Because unless you define that properly, you may well find that you get lost in the whole kind of design process. You kind of forget, like, what is it? Who is it? Who am I trying to kind of convert to help the planet here? I'm not quite sure. I got a bit lost. So
this is one thing that I'm getting this one message through everything I'm working on, everything I'm learning, as well as my own consulting, is just niching down big time. Like you said, niching down with the target audience. Like, okay, we're trying to get out to something like new mothers, like you've had a baby, but then what age of new mothers, like younger ones or older ones, or whether you lean more right or left in your politics, what area you live in. I mean, just getting so much more niche and then niche down about the user, niching down about the behavior. And then we can be very, very specific about what we want people to do and be able to create campaigns that are going to have more emotional traction and then more cohesion, because people who are in your audience, they're going to see people they recognize. Oh, I recognize that person. They're one of me, because that's the closer people are to each other, the more likely behaviors are to spread. And it does seem that you can get really lost thinking, oh, we just want to kind of create this like good thing, you know, and then it's kind of like all things to all people. And so I'm just hearing what you're saying about really trying to really go the extra mile to really deeply understand who your user is. But is that really the hardest thing? I mean, that was the question, the hardest thing. Like, is that really like finding out your user? I don't know if I fully got the answer that was the hardest thing as opposed to just an important thing.
To add on to that, right, from a technical perspective, it's also very tough sometimes to design for this file size limit to make it accessible for as many phones as possible, right? To allude to the platform itself. So the creative team also comes with challenges of like, all right, we want to make it visually appealing and detailed and also very high quality, but then you need to downscale sometimes the quality of these visuals in order to adhere to the file size limit, which from a technical perspective, if you work with 3D models, can be very, very tough sometimes, because let's say you want to have a very cool design 3D model, but it had lots of polygons, so to say, the triangles in there on the 3D model itself. You need to distill that down. And as a designer, that can be very tough, because you basically, it's kill your darlings. Like what do you sacrifice on that certain model in order to give the best possible experience? I think that's the hardest, also one of the hardest parts in our design process, right? Is adhering to this file size limit. And I totally understand why they have that, because I have a high-end phone, but someone maybe in Vietnam doesn't have the latest iPhone. And we need to make sure that on lower end devices, it is also a playable experience. And that's why this file size limit is there. So it's accessible for as many people as possible. And also it's tough, but challenging in a fun way. That sometimes come across like, no, we need to upload the effect for approval. And then, we're like 0.5 MBs over. Okay, then we need to look at the experience again. Okay, maybe what can we remove from the experience so we could adhere to it as well.
tiny add to that is sometimes just managing your clients' expectations.
Oh, yes.
Because they do fall very much into but we want this to be all things to all people, right? I even had a comment along the way when we were designing the 100 Days to Beat Plastic Pollution stuff. It's like, yes, but what about people not on Instagram? Like, yeah, but the entire brief was to make a toolkit for Instagram. Yeah. I'm sorry, but we really cannot, trying really hard, as Olivier was saying, with the lower end devices, because the file size it's only 4 megabytes, right? So it's really small, and you just can't be all things to all people. And so managing that your clients' expectations in that sense is can be quite tough going.
It's some real error in the thinking of this all things to all people thing that goes on. When I put out my first zero waste book, I had a picture of me on the cover with a pink background because I'm just really into pink. And I was holding my baby because I just had a baby and she was the most important thing in my life. So I was like, why would I not put my baby on the cover? And I put some flowers out. And then somebody wrote on the messages, well, they said it's a shame. Not just a shame, it wasn't rude. It was just saying that, Katie, I think you probably shouldn't have put a pink background and a baby and flowers, because now you've excluded 50% of the population, which is men. And oh my God, this created outrage in the forum of like, men can wear pink and they have babies too, and rah, rah, rah. It was like fully everybody was fighting about it so much. And I didn't really personally find it insulting, but I just thought it was just so interesting that people have this desire to be like, you've got to make it all things to all people, and just realize that it's the opposite. You have to niche down. And that is the way something will get traction. So we're just hammering this home. So in case nobody gets the memo, the pennies dropping about making things niche. So I've got what is the hardest thing. So what has been the most surprising thing in a positive way, the most positive, surprising, fun thing that has emerged? And I'm interested specifically about the mechanics as well. There's so many different game mechanics that you can choose from, like one that was particularly interesting or particularly worked well, better than the others.
Maybe with say no to single use, right? There was like, I don't know, do we use blinking, that kind of stuff. We had actually, we made a little mistake when we worked on fashion slowdown, for example. We didn't test it properly with enough people. And actually in Asia, because so many people wear glasses, it was just like trying to capture their blinking eye movements is actually really hard. So we kind of learned along the way, actually, that's kind of like the type of interaction that you actually end up choosing is really, really important.
Same with say no to single use, but then also with cleaner oceans. It was also, first of all, surprisingly that we thought, oh, you can move around with your phone and then tap on it with your other hand. But then thinking about it and testing it out again, it's like, oh, but then you need to use your other hand to collect it and it feels weird. So then surprisingly enough, we came up with the idea to use just that little pointer in the middle to just move your phone around with one hand. So you need to use the other hand. And surprisingly, that works very well. And it's a more fun experience where you feel like you're indulged or like in the ocean because of what Kay mentioned, with this slower movement that your net goes a bit slower. These are really surprising elements that come up during the design process in a good way.
Because we think like, oh, look, we're just going to do this tapping thing. It'd be really fun, right? Just everyone tap the screen. And then it just is like actually in testing, it's like, no, that's just not going to work. I mean, also because when you double tap the screen, it flicks your camera. So then everyone would be like, oh, switching to the selfie, and like, oh no, we didn't actually, this isn't the right way. So as Ollie said, it's actually really good. And because the way they then designed it, because they made it kind of more laggy, it feels almost as if you're getting that kind of water drag on your kind of net. As we cycle through the different interactions that there are available on the augmented reality Spark AR, we always do get surprised, actually, right? When we're like, this is the one, actually. We always try out lots of different ones, and we try them on different people, especially because we learned our lesson with fashion slowdown. We learned it the hard way.
I know blinking. We don't want to be wary of the blinking feature. Yes. Well, yes. I mean, I had an interesting experience with my 6-year-old daughter, is that she loved the underwater one. As soon as she saw it, she was like, Mommy, I'm chasing fish around the bedroom. And she was like so in it. But then she saw the one with the face, where all the plastic is on the face. And she was so frightened of it. She actually started crying and she ran out of the room.
Oh, wow.
It was very, very scary, that one with all the things on the
trash
face.
monster.
The trash monster. Yes. So be careful of small children and monsters in terms of your target audience. But we have our first question of the session with David Goodman.
Hi. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you. This was absolutely fascinating. I've been beginning to explore using viral marketing and growth for trying to increase political engagement on climate issues. So this is very, very interesting for me to listen to, which leads to my first question, since there's so much that's been fascinating here. The first real question I had was, we talked a little bit about niching down to a target audience. And I was curious how you balance how much do you niche down to try to specifically target a specific audience versus trying to keep it as wide as possible?
Largely, to be very honest with you, right now, we're quite guided by our project sponsors. So they're the ones who will come to us and be like, oh, we want to target this. We will then work through with them and advise them if they're going off in the wrong direction of like wanting to be everything to everyone. And we'll help them. And we just share stories exactly like we've shared today. Like, well, last time, maybe with Run for Nature, it's like super fun, but maybe we kind of lost out on the educational aspects. Maybe perhaps we shouldn't do that because obviously for the target audience, you wanted them to get behind this For Nature tag and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's kind of just about really trying anyway to have time to then go to drill down into the target audience that's desired with the client. But unfortunately, sometimes there isn't an awful lot of time and energy given to that. So, oh, no, but we've already done that. We've already decided, thanks. Like that, we just want you to do this. And it can be quite hard in that sense to kind of manage that.
And sometimes with the defined target audience then, or age range or whatever we need to focus on, you also need to understand what is the motivation for people to share something on their Instagram story, for example, because that can be very different per person, right? Some people just think it's funny if they look a bit weird, or if they maybe have a beautifying thing, or they're all, for example, in this target audience that maybe a 24-year-old would like to share it more if they look funny, but they don't see the rest of their face. That's why with Drowning in Plastic, you see that only the eyes and the mouth pop out, right? So that gives them more encouragement to, okay, I'm actually quite comfortable to share it. And later on, you see it's a more a kind of beauty filter with the color grading on there as well, to also make it a bit more nicer, so to say. So these are all other motivation. Other people have different motivations. So we need to also think about, okay, what motivates people to share this on their story, if that's okay for them. Some people don't care. For example, my mom wouldn't mind at all to share whatever she wants on her social media. But my other friends, they really are like, okay, no, I don't want to be profiled as a weird looking person. But if it's fun enough, then it's okay to do so. So everybody has different kind of motivations. So we need to also look at that as well.
If you're in the realm where you don't have a kind of project sponsor or a client telling you what the target audience is, and you're able to determine that yourself, then it's just about going out and asking people, real life people who you think that have a hunch. You might be like, okay, I'm going to go for 18 to 25, or I'm going to go for 13 to 18, whatever it is. You decide on maybe a set that you want to then run a test on, and then go and find genuine people who are that age and ask them, if I did this, do you think that you would share it? And just tell me honestly, if not, then why not? Oh, it's because, you use your social media to look good, or for example, and this particular kind of offering isn't going to make you look particularly good. Okay, maybe I can work with that, and maybe I can work around it, etc. You need to understand the motivations of your target audience, and there's no better way than kind of just going to ask them. So often what we do is we have this kind of like focus group of like young students, because we're mostly looking at young Gen Z type people who spend a lot of time on social media, but also we employ a big team of Gen Z people. And I never forget when I was having a deep dive with one of she's our chief storyteller. She's 24 years old. And she was like, I get all of my news from Instagram. For someone like me, I'm 42, right? And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's, for me, I'm like, Instagram is full of like, for my Instagram, it's full of like people on holiday, just doing their thing and just mucking around. So like, how on earth can you, that this is a travesty. She's like, no, because I've actually taken time to curate my Instagram. So I follow BBC News, I follow The Guardian, I follow the da-da-da. So what she sees as her news, yes, she sees her friends also on holiday, but it's also peppered with visual literacy in the sense of she sees the news visually. She sees the news as a series of photos or videos. Now, for someone like me, I'm also a lawyer, I'm like, no, but I live in the land of words, and words are the only way that you can understand something, So it's taught me as well. We need to understand our target audience very deeply in order to then be able to design something that's going to grab their attention, and then they're going to interact with it, and then they're going to go on and share it with their friends as well. So we're constantly having these conversations with the target audience, whether they're employees at MeshMinds or whether they're kind of friends of friends in this same network. So it's really important to kind of get under their skin and get into their head and be like, if I design this for you, would you or would you not enjoy it and share it? Tell me honestly, and then we go forward from there.
I've found that just in speaking to a lot of different game designers and also just in my own research of personality styles is that you've got not just a niche demographic, but you've also got personality styles that are more drawn to competitive things, more drawn to novelty, more drawn to social connectivity. So different game mechanics, like if you're getting like two people to compete with each other, some people are very competitive, some people just kind of want to be friends, some people want to have something more gentle. And then there's also just the types of learning that you have. You said that you are a words person. I'm not a words person at all, which is crazy that like I wrote 2 books because like I can hardly write and I can hardly read, honestly. Like I'm just really mathematics and visual design. And other people are different with audios. You know, people love audiobooks. Some people really cannot absorb audiobooks. I'm great with audio, not very good with words. So you've got all these personality styles. It's just another way of thinking of the niching down, right? Not just demographics, but then game mechanics for personality styles and also different visual versus words versus audio versus gameplay. If you want to get really, really like hyper niche about what things are going to grab, what's people. But I should let Alex ask his questions.
Oh, thank you. This is super interesting. I was wondering how approachable you think that this undertaking is for someone who has some project and they want to try this type of marketing idea, or do you think it's just too involved and that you can only hire out like a company like yours or something to do it for you? Just how approachable is it?
It's very easy to use, basically. You don't need any coding experience or whatsoever to start creating your own AR effects for Instagram and Facebook. It's super easy to use. So I really encourage you to go to Facebook or to Google, just Spark AR Studio download, because then you get guided through certain templates. They have certain tutorials. It's a super intuitive tool where you can use something called the patch editor, which is basically a visual coding tool, or like a blueprinting tool, how you can make certain interactions. But yeah, I'm not a coder, for example, and I can make my own AR experience as well. It's not hard. You can, of course, make it super hard for yourself and go into JavaScript and amend certain things, but it's very easy to use. It's basically using, all right, face tracker, insert face tracker. What do you want the face tracker to do? Okay, show a certain image, show a certain animation. And it's actually very easy to use to get a hang of it. And there's lots of tutorials out there that you can find as well. I think Spark AR has their own curriculum as well that you can go, but there are also other people out there who can help you out on from YouTube to other forms. I think you have Lens List is also a very, very good website where you can get inspiration from other creators out there. And sometimes they also have certain blog posts, for example, how to market your AR effects. And it's a very, very handy resources. Don't feel scared about the software itself.
What about bringing in more advanced technology like Mapbox, GIS maps, or just real live data? Can you bring in like a JSON feed of real CO2 data and have it kind of dynamically changing?
We really wanted to do that, and we were actually approached to work on the Clean Air Day this year on exactly that. Can we get real-time air data, and then when people open up the experience, they actually kind of see like kind of how maybe you're kind of in a cloud because
exactly that would be the dream project, right?
No, exactly, right. But no, they don't allow any linking to other outside data, unfortunately, at the moment. They may bring it back now. Unfortunately, they used to, and it was called the networking module, and you could actually kind of say, oh, go and get that from there and bring it in. So you could even bring stuff in from like Jiffy and outside and all that stuff. Unfortunately, people kind of ruined the party because then lots of people were like, oh, cool, right, so I'll set them something to live that maybe links to a nice flower that I'm going to put on my head. But then later, I'm going to go and change that into something really horrible. And that was then when, because of abuse of the system, then they turned that networking module off. So it might come back. It would be awesome if it did. And exactly to your point, in terms of real life data and all that stuff, that would be really awesome. So let's see. But I suppose maybe Meta / Facebook are kind of moving in the right direction. They've now created this climate science center. They're trying to make fact-checked information available to lots of people. They've just launched it in Asia. So maybe they might kind of allow something like linking to real life data that they have already fact-checked, but you won't be able to just link to any old data. We live in hope.
What about like maps, like Pokemon Go, map-based, map box type of interactions?
These things are coming, by the way. So recently there was Facebook Connect, and then from there, when they announced the rebranding and everything, they also announced some new features. So certain types of geolocated AR effects within Instagram and Facebook is coming. So these are really cool geolocated world effects where you can, for example, go to, I think it's going to launch first in Japan, then you go to Yoyogi Park, and then when you're there, you can launch this new Instagram map. And this Instagram map, you can see all these different types of AR effects that you can use. For example, place an artwork in that park, like a digital artwork. So these features are coming, which is going to be very interesting. And honestly, personally, I can't wait to explore more, to go outside and place different type of artwork or explore art outside using augmented reality. It's also very, very cool and really ready to come, basically.
Don't forget, and it's not just about Meta's products either, right? There's Snapchat's very active in the scene, as well as Niantic as well, who are the owners of Pokemon Go. So there's a massive push into all types of AR, actually. In terms of face effects and that kind of stuff, Instagram is the biggest platform. It has the most users. And as Ollie was saying, Spark AR is really quite easy to get on board with. But there's a whole load of amazing magic going to come with the world effects. And that is the kind of Pokemon Go style things, right? That's going to paint the world around us with all sorts of visuals and new information that we're going to kind of potentially use, in Tim Cook's words, every single day. Your life will be impacted in some way by you using augmented reality. So even Apple is also getting on board massively with this too. So do keep up with all of them. It's not just a Facebook only thing. There's lots and lots of different amazing products out there.
And if you could bring the data and the maps together, the environmental data, like you said, of air pollution, of carbon emissions, etc., and then see it in the geographical places where it's happening, I mean, that could be potentially very powerful. Hey, David, did you have another question?
I did, actually. I was curious if you've explored any campaigns where you have kind of more immediate calls to action, like swipe up and do something at link, rather than trying to encourage people to change their behaviors in a more distant time scale, and what's worked well or not worked well for those kinds of things.
We haven't yet, but I think that would be a dream, so that we would be able to, for example, like say, donate now, swipe up now, do something right now. But we haven't been asked to do anything like that yet.
Not yet, but now recently Instagram launched this sticker called Link, because Instagram has some restrictions to swipe up, to learn more, to link to certain websites for people over 10K followers, et cetera, et cetera. Now they've included that feature to link to a certain website for every user. So you could include that sticker into your link, but we haven't dabbled around on that yet, because our was really focused on, hey, behavioral change. Come on, guys, let's do this, let's do that. So linking wise, it is possible, right? But
but it's literally, I think that came like last week or the week before, right? It's really new, right? So we want to test it out ourselves as well. So a great point. It's exactly the right direction that we want to go in. Act right now rather than later.
Well, I am really excited about getting our group together, especially this Imagine group, the Biophilic Cities Imagination group, and trying to get everybody to, either we all work together to make one for the project, or everybody works together on trying to put greenery around it. Like I said, this is a viable thing to do, right? To get my group, I've got about 200 people in the group, and we all work together, and people can create their own and they can put them on their own Instagram. Like this is a thing that can be done.
Absolutely. We run a whole kind of, I think it's 1 hour or 1.5 hours, sorry, Ollie, for your virtual workshop that teaches people Spark AR. So happy to just kind of run that for the 200 and see if anyone wants to kind of do that, or we kind of see what people want to build and we can all build it together, see how. Absolutely, anything's possible.
Yeah, what a great way of engagement, to just engage anybody on anything. Like all the environmental groups should be doing this, just for a way of like getting a greater kind of touch point, a greater kind of connection with their audience. Okay, so anyway, so I asked 2 questions to finish off, which was, if you could project forward into 100 years where the world was very much better than it is now, a lot of problems that would be fixed. If you could solve one particular thing that would be kind of like your nerdgasm about the one thing that you think that needs to be changed that will help tip over the dominoes of the other things,
I suppose I've just been living this plastic pollution life so much that I think it's something that you can get on board with, and everyone needs to pull together. So if we are in 100 years' time where we're living in a world where everyone has access to vegetables, sustainable living is not the preserve of the rich. That would be my absolute dream.
And also for me is getting more people to understand how to use tech for good, and not only focusing on entertainment, but on edutainment. Learning can be fun. It can be combined together. And that is something that really opened my eyes, and hope along the way that people would understand this too, and always incorporate some type of education into their entertainment. And you see it happening now already with, for example, with Marvel Studios. They are trying to bring diversity or deaf actors into their great blockbuster movies, and to using entertainment for good to also educate people on certain topics, because not all problems will be solved. There will always be another problem, but we can use the tools or the technology that people are using to actually activate them. And I think that is my dream also coming true.
And what are you most excited about in your own work, in your own creative journey?
Can't wait to maybe use augmented reality in the music world. So music is something that really brings people together. It has this massive unifying effect, and there's just not enough celebrities and musicians using cool augmented reality inside their music videos to then actually use that platform to then share the messages for good.
And you, Ollie, most excited about in your creative journey?
I think Kay would hate me for this, but I would say wearables. Going forward with AR glasses, for example, with all the prototypes are going along, to really augment your whole life and to make, for example, certain changes around you, and also activating other people saying, hey, this is the world we could live in. Change their perspectives on a mixed reality way. I cannot wait to dive into this in the near future as well, to change people's perspectives using wearables.
It's very exciting. I've had a lot of ideas for things that can be done, and showing people different possible worlds is definitely exciting potential, and hopefully it will all come true and we can all start actually making some of this stuff. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kay and Ollie. I don't think anyone's ever heard, well, not say anyone's ever heard, obviously your work has gotten out to lots of people, but in terms of the day-to-day sustainability people I'm talking to all the time, nobody's doing this. They're not thinking this creatively. They're not thinking about this whole idea of social diffusion and social marketing and just how powerful it will be. So it's been a pleasure and a delight to hear all of your wisdom and to understand your experience about creating these really fun campaigns and how we can use it to really get out to lots and lots of people. Because this is what this really is about. It's about how to get out to lots and lots of people, and then hopefully bridge that gap into the experience, into the real live action. So thank you again. And hopefully our work at UNEP that we did together, or in crossing over in clean seas, will take off and go somewhere, and hopefully actually clean some seas somewhere.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. And I must say, just give you a last little plug. I mean, this is an amazing book, everyone. I've been diving into it, and I think I just agree with so much of the stuff that you've put up. So it's been a real pleasure to spend time with you all today as well. So, thank you.